The next speaker is another whistleblower from inside the machine. He could have had a comfortable retirement. He might have been knighted. He might even have ended up in the House of Lords. He certainly would have ended up on the comfortable dinner party circuit of the establishment, for he was, after all, one of Her Majesty's esteemed ambassadors. But he chose instead to stand up against the lies, the disinformation, the terrorism, the regime change operation mounted by, amongst others, our own government, of which he was once a part. Please welcome His Excellency Peter Ford.
Thank you very much, George, for that warm introduction. Very hard for me to live up to your kind words, but let us get to the point. Thank you all for being here this evening. I know we're all very concerned about Julian, but with our concern, we must keep in mind at the same time the cause or causes for which Julian has been suffering, and that cause is the struggle against imperialism. As George has rightly said, that term imperialism, it sounds anachronistic, but you have to call the beast by its name. That is partly part of its modus operandi. They try to act under the radar. They don't like people to call the empire by its name. And what we're seeing at the moment is a wounded beast, an empire which is striking back. But the forces of the people have not had the last word yet. That is why we're here tonight. Looking back to 2010, that avalanche of leaks from Wikileaks, that rocked the foundations of imperialism, really rocked the foundations, the sheer scale of the revelations and the immensity of the atrocities that were revealed, particularly about the behavior of US forces in Iraq, the torture, the indiscriminate killings. Ordinary people's opinion and imaginations were grabbed by these leaks. So the empire really was being rocked on its foundations. And let's not forget that it was partly because of that groundswell of genuinely popular opposition to war, unnecessary war, that helped to bring Donald Trump to power. Was he not, as candidate Trump, the guy who was going to bring the troops home, going to end the never-ending wars? Wasn't that the platform? A platform that Julian Assange and Wikileaks had helped create, had paved the way for that groundswell of opinion on which Trump rode to power. The Judas Trump, this pathetic man who is now the plaything of the warmongers, who, once he got into power, forgot all his previous declarations, invited into the House of Power the warmongers, the John Boltons, the Mike Pompeos, the deep state, the physical manifestations of the deep state, of the permanent military security government, which really governs America and arguably this country and France as well. He brought these people into his house and let himself be led by the nose by them. Partly let himself be led into worsening relations with Russia. This was another irony, because the candidate Trump had argued for having good relations with Russia, but he's presided over an administration which has seen relations go to their worst point in many, many years. And it's ironic that while Russia itself has been moving away from the communist, very dogmatic, doctrine-driven, authoritarian approach, America has been moving closer to that model. And don't think that America doesn't have an equivalent to communism, doesn't have an ism. It does. And that is imperialism, or by its scholarly name, American exceptionalism. This is the term that's used by scholars, and it's not a term of opprobrium. It's boasted about by many Americans. They see America as the beacon on the hill, the country created with God's help, the hand of providence, bringing supreme values to the rest of humanity, with their 700 military bases and their immense bullying economic power to impose sanctions on dozens and dozens of poorer, weaker countries. That is American exceptionalism at work. And here's the thing, the believers in this creed believe in it more than Russians, or very few Russians, actually believed in communism, because Americans imbibe this with the mother's milk, that America was born to lead. And doesn't it get under your skin when people refer to the President of the United States as the leader of the free world? I mean, we must be grateful to Trump, because he has embodied the stupidity of this and shown us how weak and feeble we are for even accepting the concept that the President of the United States. We must give him a warm welcome when he comes to London. I'm sure we'll have some events to mark that august event. Syria has been at the receiving end of much of this American imperialism of recent years. It's as though the Iraq war never happened. We're hearing the same or similar lies about use of weapons of mass destruction. In Syria's case, alleged use of chemical weapons shown by independent experts to be fake. I don't need to go into detail about that now, but the Americans have made a bad situation worse in Syria. Not content with having spoilt Iraq and helped to generate the beginnings of ISIS, which then spread to Syria. No, they had to make the situation in Syria worse by putting their own troops in northern Syria and now refusing to withdraw them. Trump, in a rare moment of lucidity back in December, announced out of the blue that he was going to withdraw the troops. Cue the most awful caterwauling on the part of the establishment. The minions of the deep state leapt into action in this country as well, and in newspapers like The Guardian. And incidentally, doesn't that typify the immense move to the right of elites worldwide since actually 2010, since the Iraq War? Who would have imagined in 2010 that the Americans would start or be instrumental in starting another 3 wars in the Middle East, plus Venezuela, Syria, Yemen, and virtual war with Iran already, plus now Venezuela kicking off. No, the empire has struck back powerfully, and I greatly fear now what is possibly going to happen with Iran. America is effectively at war with Iran, and they're blatant about it. The economic warfare of sanctions is designed to bring Iran to its knees, and America will not take yes for an answer. The independent international watchdog on nuclear weapons has crawled over Iran and given them a clean bill of health. They've been respecting the Iran nuclear agreement that was concluded by Obama. But the Americans will not take yes for an answer. They want regime change in Iran. And we must be very vigilant and do what we can to keep our own government from being dragged into yet another unnecessary conflict. I'll conclude on that note. I just want to express my own hopes that tomorrow the judges will be aware of opinion in this country. I'm not overly hopeful, but in 2010, Julian and Wikileaks team helped to kick off something very, very important. They rocked the foundations of imperialism. The counterattack has been underway for several years and is now coming to a climax. That's why it's so important that we be here tonight and make our voices heard. Thank you.